What's up, everybody? Emperor John Kill 3D Gaming here, and I've been waiting to make my review of Resident Evil 4, the remake. Now, you all know how much I love Resident Evil. It's up there with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars to me, and Dragon Ball Z. Resident Evil holds a very special place in our hearts, especially number 4. But it was because of part 4, which a lot of fans don't want to accept, that kind of started the spiraling down the action path that 4, 5, 6 took in the early to mid 2000s to later 2000s. Now, with the remake, it follows in line with Capcom's RE2 remake, Resident Evil 3 remake, Resident Evil Village, and Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. I don't think that Capcom needed to reboot or remake Resident Evil 4, but in a way, I was proven wrong by that. Because for many years, please excuse my burp, just had McDonald's. For many years, I have been saying that Resident Evil 4 is not a horror game. Because there's people that will argue saying, oh, it's the best survival horror. There's nothing about Resident Evil 4 original that is survival horror at all. It is a really good action game with some horror elements. Stressful situations and 6th generation gaming bullshit like cheap deaths and kills and all that don't constitute as horror. They just constitute as annoying gaming mechanics. Okay? And gaming mechanics is not going to scare me. Now, with this game, with Resident Evil 4, built again from the ground up with this RE engine that Capcom has been using. And so far, I have not seen a single bad game done in the RE engine. I believe Capcom is on the right path with the Resident Evil series, because I understand why they want to do it. One, you have to fix a lot of the inconsistencies that the original games and series did create, because whether fans want to accept it or not, there are pretty good big plot holes in the original version of the series. This series, remake series, is ironing it out. And I'm pretty sure Resident Evil Remake 5 and a couple of other games are on the horizon, but I will get to that later because I do have some thoughts on what they should and should not do as of yet. But with Resident Evil 4, this really was a game made with the heart and the soul of not only the fans in mind, but the fans of the original. All the way down to the difficulty settings, where each difficulty setting is either people that are new to Resident Evil or people that are professionals at Resident Evil. So either way, it can bring in both types of gamers, either the casual Resident Evil fan or survival horror fan, or the hardcore survival and Resident Evil fan. And there are some things that I will discuss that people seem to be making a big deal, which really isn't a big deal. But overall, how the story is presented here this time around, and how the enemies and the environments, it will all feel familiar, but it will feel like you are playing it again for the very first time, where you think you know what you're doing, and you will. But at first, you will not know what you're doing. Looking at this game, it's like looking at Resident Evil 4, the original, in a mirror world, if that makes any sense. It's like the areas and locations you knew are the same, but how you get there and what happens in them are changed slightly or deviated highly. But I think that is for the betterment of the story. They try to add more reasoning behind characters. They try to make the story more cohesive and more narrative driven, with cutscenes and things like that, because in the original you really didn't have too much cutscenes. Well, you did, but they really weren't cutscenes. The cutscenes, you always still had to do gameplay, to defend yourself, quick time events and all that. There's not really too many quick time there's no quick time events in the boss battles or anything like that in this game, or fighting, except for when you get grabbed by a ganado, or you do the parrying with the knife, which is one of the new mechanics that I really like with this game compared to the original. That knife is your best friend in a godsend. Now this time around, Leon, portrayed by the same guy from the not original, but Resident Evil 2 Remake, reprises his role here. And how does he do? He's earning his place as Leon. Now, the difference with this game versus the original Resident Evil 4, Leon was already a badass out the gate. You just have to assume, oh, your zombie killing experience in the first game in Resident Evil 2 is what turned you into an all elite badass with some training. Here, Leon has the training, but Leon grows into the Leon we love and remember. See, that's what makes this game a little bit more different. This is still almost like Resident Evil 2 was how we were introduced to Leon, and in the remake, we were reintroduced to him. We were getting to know him, but he still wasn't the all-around superior badass. Everything he just did was he skinned away by his bare teeth. You know, by the bare skin of his teeth. That's how he got away. But in this game, Leon becomes the baddest motherfucker on the planet. Now, when it comes to how they change the systems around, the merchant, I like how he's handled this time around. You know, you can do side objectives and even missions for him besides the blue medallions, which are here, which you can shoot. But this time, the spinel gems, like the spinel, if you remember those gems from the original game, are actually used as a separate type of currency known as trade. And this time, you can trade for items that you either have a hard time getting a hold of, or that could help you with current items that you have, like such as sights, um, crafting items. Which crafting in this game, I love that Resident Evil has been implementing this crafting mechanic since Resident Evil 2 remake, like in full, where you could just craft anything on the fly, um, or combine things. Here, anything you find, if you're in a pinch, enemies are always dropping something that's craftable, and you can beat the game with the standard weapons you would normally get. If you remember the original set of Resident Evil 4 weapons that you would go through in your first run, you can pretty much do that here. Um, After, let's say, 2 or 3 rounds of New Game Plus, maybe 2 games of New Game Plus, you will feel like the super overpowered Leon that you remember. You just have to be patient and you have to work for that power. And they changed many little snippets here and there from the original game that were needed, like the U3 or the I believe it was called the U3 boss battle. I'm glad that was taken out. That was a random boss battle that literally slowed down the pace of the game. So I'm glad it was taken out. It was a useless boss battle. They took out some of the instant BS bullshit from the original, such as certain bullshit ways you would die, or sixth generation gaming nonsense that could get you killed, or Ashley that gets in the way. Now, don't get me wrong, Ashley's AI here is much better, but she can still do some stupid things. You know, she can still get away in the way of the crossfire, but this time at least she won't instantly die. She'll end up in an incapacitated state and you can get her back up. But if she gets in the way of like a grenade or something like that, you're assed out. You have to start that part again. Now, it wouldn't be Resident Evil without that. You know, Resident Evil is always known to have some bullshit behind it, you know, cheap shit. It wouldn't be Resident Evil without it, but it's lowered enough to make you feel like, okay, if I died, it was my fault. I fucked up. I screwed up this particular section. In the original game, even though you knew what you were doing, you could still get fucked up. And you're like, how in the fuck when I'm this fucking powerful or this well prepared for the situation? And they implement elements that weren't in the original Resident Evil 4. Like, they're really tying this game, and they tie all the Resident Evils together very well. Like, they're trying to create a consistent, cohesive narrative. And at least the way they presented the story here, I like that the game is not sectioned off chapter by chapter where you cannot backtrack. Like in Resident Evil 4, you really can't backtrack unless the game allows you to. Here, you could backtrack, at least until you get to the castle. You could backtrack throughout this whole village area, throughout the whole early sections of the game to treasure hunt. You're rewarded very well for exploration, and it's worth doing because every item you get, every currency you get, every little thing that you could pick up will benefit and help you later. It's almost like a Legends of Zelda game or an early Legends of Zelda game where you get something now that will be useful for a dungeon that's 3 or 4 dungeons away. That's what it feels like with Resident Evil 4 Remake. You could find something here, like a weapon or an item, something to sell or something to upgrade, and you don't need it right now. Set it aside. And the fact that this game gives you so much options how to handle the level or how to handle the game itself is what I think makes this version of it not perfect by any means, but yes, superior to its original. Hell, even the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes are superior to their original games. You know, The one thing that I didn't think I was going to have fun with, which I didn't have fun in the original, but here I like it, is the firing range. And in this version of the firing range, you are well rewarded based on your performance. You get these little coins that you take to the coin machine, because that's another thing they added to this game, a type of perk system where you go to this little not gumball machine, but little toy capsule machine where you get 3 or 4 coins. They get as many coins as you want. Like there's silver coins and there's the gold coins, which will get you different items in this machine. Now what they are, they're like dangling keychains with designs reminiscent of the original game. Like you have the original Ganado looks. So it's basically, since everybody has a remade look here, the original looks are confined to these little keychains. But these keychains you equip to your chest. Now that's also another thing. The chest, your loadout chest can be expanded like normal, but you equip these little keychains so you can equip 3 at a time of different rarity. They allow you to craft more bullets, find items more easily. Hell, the rate of ammo drops increases, and it gives you a reason to play the gun range, because these do help you in the long run. I didn't notice it until I got to the castle and the island section, because in the beginning sections all the way to get up to the castle, you know what you're doing. It feels like traditional Resident Evil 4, with the deviations like I said. Now some of the puzzles are still the same. I'm fine that Resident Evil has been making their puzzles very simplistic and focusing on the atmosphere and the horror to get to you, because let's be real, I like the original games and the original puzzles weren't all that hard, but they did slow down the pace of the game and they kind of got redundant after a while. It's okay to have puzzles, but not to be able to access the whole game. But that is one of the things that made the original games very, very memorable. Now, there is one thing I want to speak on, and that is the voice acting. The voice acting in Resident Evil, ever since the first one, and I don't care what any fan says, because you would be in denial if you said that this wasn't the case. Resident Evil has always had bad voice acting and bad dialogue. Okay? It always has. So this argument that Ada's voice actor, I'm going to break it down. You want to know what it really is? Because nobody's going to admit it to themselves, but it's easy to just deny rather than admit. The reason why people are going after Ada's voice in this game, because it's not the sexy, seductive, full-blown, I'm going to jump Leon's bones Ada from the original game. And I think they might have missed that message from the Resident Evil 2 remake, because she acts no different here than she did then. Okay, Ada is more serious this time around, and she's more focused on getting her job done rather than playing titty-tattle with Leon. Okay? And it's just sad and pathetic that people are attacking and basically harassed a voice actor off of the internet because of that. If you're the kind of gamer that just does that, then you don't belong playing the game, period, and you're not a fan of the game at all. Because you can have your grievances with something or someone or a voice actor, but don't go out your way to attack the voice actor. Don't go out your way to get them off the internet because they didn't sound like the ideal version of Ada that you wanted. Okay? There are many games that are your favorite that voice actors come and go or they change. Okay? And yes, I've played this game at least 4 times, New Game Plus already. Ada's voice didn't bother me at all. She basically sounds the same she did in the Resident Evil 2 remake in any game she has been in so far. Okay? There's a difference between a remake character and an original character for a reason. If you do the same exact thing, then it's not really a remake. It defeats the purpose of a remake. I hope some of these idiots out there can understand that, because you might have just potentially ruined one of the voice actors who may not want to come back because she could see the fan base as toxic for that kind of stupid shit. Okay? Just because it's not Ada, super sexy Ada, that gives all these guys a fucking boner being the voice in the game, they treat it like it's the end of the fucking world. Well, too bad. Look, if you want sexy voice Ada, why don't you go watch some adult orientated versions of Ada videos, or why don't you get yourself a seductive Asian wife and dress her up as Ada so you can cosplay? There you go. Problem solved. It has nothing to do with the voice actor. It just has to do with a bunch of horny dudes that didn't get the fucking ADA that they wanted, so they just were like, we're gonna take it out on someone who's innocent type thing. So now that that's got out the way, I want to say that Capcom, when you whatever games you have in the future to be remade, whether that be 5, Code Veronica, Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil Outbreak, you have a lot of potential to really keep this series as invigorated as you're doing. Resident Evil has almost become a generational thing where one generation grew up with the original series and I grew up with midway through the end of the series. But now you get to reimagine this series as what you really wanted it to be. You know, a test of survival horror. And I'm not saying Resident Evil 4 is pure survival horror, which it's not. Like I said, your first round of the game, you're going to be intimidated by what's around you, but when you master it, when you power yourself up and then play it again to get better and better at the game, then it becomes the action-oriented Resident Evil you remember. But I think that's what Capcom is doing. If you want action-oriented Resident Evil, you need to work for it. You need to fight for it. You need to basically go through the grind to become that super-powered infection killer that Chris Redfield became, that Leon became, Barry became, Jill became. They just don't give you that out the gate. And it was very unrealistic even in the original game. As much as I love the original game of Resident Evil 4 is not survival horror. It's not. It's just a really good action game, but a poor Resident Evil game. But this game right here not only lives up to the title of being Resident Evil 4, it reinvigorated the very game that a lot of people said didn't need to be remade or didn't need to be reinvigorated. Well, guess what? It proved everyone wrong. It sure as hell proved me wrong, and I'm the first one to admit it. The game that I thought didn't need to be remade because I personally want Resident Evil Outbreak, this game turned me around, and I'm looking forward to every single run I do of it. Anyway, this is Emperor John Kill 3D Gaming. Be sure to like, subscribe, favorite, and I'll see you on the next video and or live stream. Take care, everyone.